Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first episode of the Packers Brawl podcast, powered by our friends over at Manscaped and at DraftKings. Remember, it's March and college basketball is heating up. Thanks to our partnership with DraftKings, now you can take your best shot at who will be in the tournament before the field is set for your share of $100,000. Create or access your DraftKings account and enter the contest for your shot at $100,000 in cash prizes. Just go to dkng.co/brawlmarch. Eligibility restrictions apply. Again, that is dkng.co/brawlmarch. Hurry. That offer ends today, actually. So get on that. I am your host, Ryno. You can find me on Twitter at Sports Talk Ryno. Jeez, I'm already slipping over my words. I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Mr. Brandon. You can find him on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. And then, of course, the Packers Brawl podcast is on Twitter at Packers Brawl. Guys, welcome to the first installment. Welcome to the first episode of the Packers Brawl podcast. We're glad to have you here. Brandon, how are you feeling, bud?
Oh man, I'm excited. I'm just skimming through some things on Twitter. We got some people moving already throughout the league. I'm doing great.
Yeah, it's gonna be an exciting day.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. I think we'll see a lot of things trickle down later as the day goes on. Lot to get into, a lot to figure out. It's going to be an interesting offseason, to say the least.
Yeah, this is, Facebook football, is really the only sport in America that does not have an off season.
Absolutely not.
We have games going on right now. We've got several different things to watch. You've got franchise tags that ended last week. Now all of a sudden you have, re-signing of current players or the signing of new players in free agency. And then in a couple of weeks we'll be talking the draft, and then a couple of weeks after that we'll be talking OTA. So it's a 365-day-a-year industry, and that's what makes football the most exciting. Now, for those of you out there that recognize me, I am on the Point of Discussion podcast as well. You've seen me on there for the past, I'd say about 2 months or so. Brandon and I decided to fire up the Packers Brawl podcast that we will also be doing weekly. This is Brandon's first endeavor into podcasting, and I know a lot of you may have seen the interview that he did with Juan, a part of Point of Discussion podcast earlier in the week, but I'd also just like to give you an opportunity to tell the Packers Brawl audience a little bit about yourself. Just take a couple minutes, explain your fanhood and what you're passionate about when it comes to Packers football, Brandon.
Well, what am I not passionate about as far as Packers football? A little bit about me. I was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Grew up a Packers fan. Didn't have a choice. Thanks to the greatest parents in the world. Shout out to them. So grew up a Packers fan. Obviously I'm a Wisconsin fan. We won't talk baseball, Ryno. I know you and I don't agree on baseball. So we'll keep it strictly NFL. But no. So grew up Milwaukee, Wisconsin, left at a young age, was in the Army. So I've kind of been all over the world. Met a lot of cool people. Have always been interested in doing a podcast. Which is funny how we reconnected, because I initially asked you months ago how to start one or what advice you would have, and then all of a sudden this kind of came in, so it kind of wrapped it full circle. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it. Lot to learn, lot to talk about, that's for sure. Like we were just kind of talking about walking into the pre-show, a lot to get into in the off season. So yeah, been around, around the globe. Excited to be at the Brawl Network. Like I was telling Juan on the initial interview, it's weird because I feel like I know you guys from like 10 years ago, like family. I mean, really, it's crazy. He's texting me on, he gave me his number and has reached out to me multiple times to hang out. And I promise, Juan, I know you're watching because you love the Packers.
He loves me too. So
we'll get together one of these days, I promise. But yeah, no, I'm excited. And I appreciate everybody out there at the Brawl Network, especially you and Juan. You guys have been tremendous, checking in on me, helping me get going, getting my feet moving, and getting ready to talk sports, because I've defended the Packers in Iraq and Afghanistan, stateside, to all my Army buddies who decided that they hated the Packers just because they hated me. So I'm just kidding. They love me. But yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah.
Very exciting times. I just want to take a quick second, especially for those that are watching from home right now. Just admire this screen, just nothing but green and gold. Nothing but green and gold and Packers. I love it. I love it. All right. So
They're going to offend somebody. We're going to trigger some fan base.
hey, they're here to watch. So
that's right. Hey, thank you. If you're watching, we appreciate it.
And just a quick announcement too. I had some technical difficulties trying to get onto YouTube Live for this week. So we're gonna do the Facebook Live episode this week, see how that goes. We may continue that trend into next week. And then I will obviously be getting on YouTube Live next week as well. So you'll have a couple different outlets to view the podcast on. Then, of course, afterwards, either later this afternoon or tomorrow, I'll have the podcast posted onto Spotify, iTunes, and stuff like that. So we are going to dive into the show. What we're going to talk about first, with the franchise tag coming and going. Usually the first set of moves to make after the franchise tag deadline are cap casualties or the restructuring of contracts to avoid cap issues. So Brandon, I'm going to start you off with this and just get your thoughts on what they've done so far to start opening up cap room since the tag deadline.
Well, it's funny because I have my notes right here and we went over what our topics were going to be about a week ago. And my first cap casualty was Preston Smith because I thought, there's no way that cap hit, that guaranteed is going to be something that they can move forward, especially in a year where we saw the cap hit go from over 200 to now 180, 2.5. If you're not on Facebook or if you are on Facebook, please give us a like and a follow at Packers Brawl Podcast. I put it out on one of my posts out there, Russ Ball season, because that restructure, that basically you paid $7.25 million to have him on your team this year versus cutting him and having to pay $8 million. So tremendous restructure there. And I hope that there's more down the line to open up some room. I do think that, Adrian Amos, that was they're not big extensions or they're not big restructures, but it helps, nonetheless. And then obviously Billy Turner, which we put out yesterday as well. I think it saved roughly $500,000 in cap space. So they're working their angles and you can tell that because of the league and because of the cap going from over 200 now going down to 182, you can see that Brian and Russ are getting creative. They're finding whatever ways they can to dip into contracts. And to me, I mean, obviously I bleed green and gold. That goes without saying, but I applaud them so far. And I think this is just the scratching of the surface. I think we're going to see, in my opinion, I had to guess, I hope Adams gets extended and possibly Za'Darius. I'm not sure about Rodgers. Last year's draft threw a wrench, I think, in the fold for everything. So I'm not 100% confident that is, something that they're going to come near with his contract. And I think what is he signed to through
3 more years?
3 more years. So, I mean, I guess we'll see. I think it's been tremendous so far what they've done. And like I said, there's a lot yet to come through. I think as the day goes on, we're going to see a lot of these small restructures, but I think after the Preston, Adrian Amos and Billy Turner, I mean, they only $1.5 million to go to get under that cap number. So that's tremendous work so far.
Yeah, that Preston Smith contract. Now, I mean, with his production last year, and I'm not going to put 100% of his production or lack thereof on him. There was a lot of the times he was utilized improperly. I mean, seeing him lined up out wide in coverage and downfield is just not something you never want to see your team. He just does not have the versatility to do that. However, the restructured deal for Preston Smith, it's a $1 million base salary. $6.5 million of his cap hit was restructured into a signing bonus. And then now he's got the potential for bonuses based off of production. I believe it's roughly about $4.2 million ish, given on sack totals and production totals, playing time totals. So I thought that was a brilliant deal based off of what he gave you last year. He still has the potential to be an effective edge rusher, but you couldn't justify paying him $16 million and having the cap hit be that high with what he's probably going to be capable of in 2021. I would love to see Preston Smith get back to what he was in 2019 rather.
I agree.
12 sacks. He was pretty much the mirror image of Za'Darius Smith. He was a presence in the backfield constantly. He was very disruptive. I would like to see him get back to that, but this contract gives you that risk to see whether Preston Smith is going to get back to that form. And if he doesn't, you free up that $7.25 million in cap space. I mean, that's the biggest cap relief that they've had so far in the offseason since the tag deadline is restructuring Preston. Another good deal that I really liked was Adrian Amos. They converted a large portion of his roster bonus and his 2021 salary into a signing bonus, and that freed up $3 million in cap space as well. So now the Packers sit approximately $1.3 million above the cap going into, I believe the deadline is midnight tonight. Is that
correct?
Right?
Yep.
Midnight tonight.
Correct. Yep.
I think what you're gonna see over the next couple of hours is you're going to see a couple of the small guys. Maybe you'll see a couple of releases. Maybe you'll see a couple of guys with contracts similar to Adrian Amos where they get restructured and they free up $1 million here, $1 million there. I don't think you're going to see anything big before midnight. I do, however, I'm on the other side of the fence of you when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. I do think you are going to see a contract restructuring with Aaron Rodgers, and I think you're going to see it for two reasons. One, you're going to see it to give him the years. He's gonna. If I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm going into the front office. This is what I'm saying. It's like, all right, guys, I called you drafting Jordan Love in the first round last year. I called that bet, and then I raised you one of the greatest seasons you've ever seen in your entire life. So you lost that hand, and now it's my turn to bet, and I'm raising you a 4-year extension, and that'll ultimately put an end to the Jordan Love era in Green Bay, which looking back on that draft pick in 2020, after what Aaron Rodgers did, if you're telling me that you're going to give Aaron Rodgers an extension and Jordan Love is gone, I'm okay with that.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
So that's the first reason why I think Aaron Rodgers takes the contract extension and restructuring. Another reason is I think Aaron Rodgers, he just watched what Tom Brady did in Tampa. He saw Tom Brady go down to Tampa, a brand new head coach, a brand new system that he's never played in before. And they're like, what do you need? And Tom Brady wrote up a grocery list of things that he needed. And they're like, we'll be right back. We'll go get that for you. And they went out and they got Gronk. They went out and they got LaShawn McCoy. They went out and they got Leonard Fournette. They went out and they got Antonio Brown. They added pieces around Tom Brady, and they made a team capable of winning a Super Bowl right away. Not a team for the future, not a team that'll probably compete 2-3 years down the road. Tom Brady went to the Bucs, and they're like, we want to win now. So I think Aaron Rodgers is willing to restructure, willing to open up some cap space. Now it might hurt them on the back end, but if I'm Brian Gutekunst, if I'm Mark Murphy, I'm like, you know what? If it hurts us 4 years down the road, I want to ring. I want to win. So I think they extend Rodgers, open up some cap space, and I think you do see a larger name free agent coming to Green Bay, whether that be a Will Fuller type player or a couple smaller pieces. I do think you see that Aaron Rodgers restructure. And another reason why you see that is I believe they also want to restructure Davante Adams, give him an extension as well. You don't want your number one wide receiver going into a season on, 1 or 2 years left on his deal after having one of the greatest seasons in Packers history. 1,300 yards, 100 and some odd catches, 18 touchdowns. You don't want that drama going into next offseason where it's nothing but Davante Adams contract talk nonstop. So I think those are the two deals you will see coming in the next week or two. I think the Packers will do what it takes to get under that cap number by midnight tonight. It'll be a couple small moves here and there, whether they say,
right,
we'll take your roster bonus, make it a signing bonus. And that eliminates $500,000 here, $500,000 there. And then the big moves will start to come next week or maybe the week after the league year starts.
Okay.
So yeah, a lot's yet to be determined. It's going to be a very, very exciting times in the next 3-4 days to see what they do with current contracts and potential free agents. Now, one of the things that I want to discuss is after the cap restructuring that we've seen with a couple of the guys so far, the franchise tag coming and leaving. What do you think is the most important move or moves, plural, that Green Bay has to make going into the free agency term, going into the new league year?
Well, I think you kind of alluded to it with your past remarks there. I think if you can, and I want to clarify, I would love to see Aaron Rodgers restructured, extended. I think maybe that him and Adams kind of line each other up with that extension. That would be something that I could see. As far as important moves, I think the most important is, and probably the least likely that's going to happen, but in an ideal world, keep your own.
Yeah.
I want Corey Linsley. I know he's going to be expensive, but guess what? So is Rodgers, and he's a vital part, obviously the most important part to that team. And if you're not protecting him, then your chances are as slim as none. And Aaron Jones, I know a lot of people are out there talking about, well, running backs, look what McCaffrey did in Carolina this year, and I don't care because Aaron Jones has not been used. The miles on Aaron Jones's legs are different than those guys of McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara and Derrick Henry. Those he has. I mean, we got to forget when Mike McCarthy was here, he didn't use them. He sat at the sideline.
Jamal Williams was the starter when McCarthy was here. Yeah.
So I think, and you can tell too throughout the season. And if you go back and you watch these games, the scheme changes a little bit. It's more dynamic when Aaron Jones is in the lineup. When he's in that backfield, that's a whole nother ballgame. I mean, how many running backs in the last 20 years for the Packers can you say, okay, 1st and 10 on a 20-yard line at any given moment, he can go 80. I mean, he has that dynamic ability to him to kind of take off and just go the distance. And we haven't had that in Green Bay since probably Amon Green, maybe early years of Ryan Grant. But even then, you're not as dynamic as Aaron Jones. For goodness sakes, he led the NFL in touchdowns last year. I mean, I think that's the most important element to their offseason is, I know it sounds generic and I know it's people want to hear, trade for Stephon Gilmore, go get, Will Fuller, go get, Kenny Galladay. That's great. You're right. And I, but I want what we got because I think they were right there with who they have. Now the schedule, we'll take a peek at the schedule later on in the show. The schedule might be a little bit harder than it was this year, but I mean, every year is a revolving door, so you never know what to expect with teams the following year. But in my opinion, I think if you can keep Aaron Rodgers and you can keep Aaron Jones and you can keep Corey Linsley. I know it's going to be expensive, and then you got the smaller names that maybe some people don't always think of. You got Big Dog, Mercedes Lewis. I mean, huge part of the run game, huge part of the passing game. I mean, he's a locker room guy. Rodgers loves him.
Best blocking tight end in the NFL.
By not even close. I mean, he put Khalil. There's a 5-minute video of him putting Khalil Mack on bricks. I mean, he just completely stalemated him. And then kind of the even probably a tier down, Lane Taylor and Tyler Ervin. Lane Taylor's kind of that, insurance piece, if you need him. I mean, I know he got paid a couple of years ago, deservedly so. Had a drop in production, obviously the injury. I believe it was his bicep. So, I mean, Tyler Ervin is another piece that I like what I see in him. I think he's dynamic in the return game. Packers for however long, probably since Desmond Howard in the Super Bowl, have lacked a return game and a dynamic ability to take one to the house. I think special teams is obviously something that needs to be addressed. I mean, obviously it already has. Yeah. Maurice Drayton,
running back. So yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah, and I mean, so that's kind of where I go. I know it's very generic, but we'll get into free agents. I know it's all gonna, it's all gonna change and dictate what happens with Lindsey. In my opinion, if I had to, if I was a betting man, I would say that Aaron Jones comes before Corey Linsley. I think Corey Linsley's out the door. I just don't think they can afford to pay him after Bakhtiari. The extension. You're either way, you're gonna lose something. But I think if you could keep Aaron Jones, keep that offense flow, that third year in Matt LaFleur's system, I think that you're going to open up the doors for a big year for that offense, even bigger than this year, if that's possible.
Yeah, I mean, I see a lot of people on Twitter and on Facebook who are screaming out like, oh, we need to go after this guy. We need to go after this guy. We need to go after this guy. And it's like, are we forgetting the fact that this was the number 1 seed in the NFC? They were 13-3. They hosted the NFC Championship game. They had a top 3 offense in the entire NFL. We don't need to go out and get this guy. We don't need to go out and get this guy. Now, if we start losing guys, then let's consider going out and getting other replacements. But if you keep as much of this team intact, you're 100% correct. It's a great team to begin with. Keep what you have. I would like to say that if we had our way, if we had the money to do so, Corey Linsley would be 100% the top priority going into the 2021 offseason, because you need his pass blocking abilities and his pass protection abilities in front of Aaron Rodgers at all times. You don't want to be paying Aaron Rodgers $30 million a year to be sitting on the bench because he tore an ACL or he broke an ankle or what have you.
Concussion.
So offensive line is obviously the number one priority. Now, when it comes to Aaron Jones, I'm a little more reserved than you are when it comes to him. I don't truly believe we need Aaron Jones. If we can keep him around for a price that's not going to jack up the cap for the next, 3 to 4 years, I'm all about keeping him because, like you said, he's one of the most dynamic backs in the NFL. He has, I would put him in the top 5 right now since the beginning of 2019.
Yep.
So for the 2019
Absolutely.
2020 season, he's been a top 5 back in the NFL. But we're not a system that lives and dies on the running game. Matt LaFleur's system is designed to flourish based off of what's happening under center. So it's not like, Ryan Tannehill down in Tennessee. If you were to tell him, hey, Derrick Henry might walk, I'm sure Titans fans would be losing their minds because that's easily 5 wins off their schedule the following year. So, Aaron Jones is a pivotal piece of this offense, but I spoke about this on the Point of Discussion podcast. If you were to give me the top 3 most pivotal guys on the Packers offense right now, it would be Aaron Rodgers number 1, Matt LaFleur number 2, Devontae Adams number 3. And then I would go as far to say David Bakhtiari might be number 4 simply because he's the best right tackle in the game.
Yep.
So if you were to say, hey, you got a guy that maybe might not even be top 5 in terms of importance to your offense is leaving the team, I don't know if I fear that as much as I would if I were a Titans fan or, a Cowboys fan with Zeke leaving. So I would love to keep Aaron Jones around. I'm not sweating if he leaves because I do believe A.J. Dillon is going to be a great backup. I would actually, to be honest with you, if we can't keep Aaron Jones around for a reasonable price, I would love to bring Jamal Williams back. I know Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones are completely different running backs. Jamal Williams is more of a north-south runner. Mm-hmm. He doesn't necessarily have the line of scrimmage agility that Aaron Jones does, but he is a better pass-blocking running back than Aaron Jones is, and his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield is probably right there with Aaron Jones in terms of a pass-catching back. He doesn't see the touches that Aaron Jones does, obviously, but I believe they could utilize him just as good as they do with Aaron Jones. So I would almost say, bring back Corey Linsley and then let's get Jamal back instead of Aaron Jones.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think Jamal Williams, too, you could argue is the best pass blocking running back in the league. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I've seen him lay edge rushers out.
Oh yeah,
on their back.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
His blitz awareness is definitely up there in terms of top 3 backs in the NFL. His blitz awareness and where to pick up the blitz, where it's coming from. I mean, it's a lot like John Kuhn. John Kuhn was not a great running fullback. He was not a playmaking fullback. His ability to pick up the blitz, pick up the pass rush from either side of the field, and give Aaron Rodgers that blocking, that protection. Mm-hmm. It made him one of the most respected fullbacks in the game when he was playing for the Packers. So I put Jamal Williams right up there with them in terms of importance to the team. I don't know if we go out and get a guy like Will Fuller. I would love to say, hey, we're bringing in one of the better, wide receiver 2s in the NFL, but I don't see that necessarily happening. A guy that I would really like to see made a free agent priority would be Dalvin Tomlin out of New York, defensive lineman for New York Giants.
Yep. I got him on my list as well. Yep.
I think that he would bolster down that defensive line. I think that he would add the depth that they need behind Kenny Clark and those guys. I think you're going to see a couple of those guys leaving. I think Tyler Lancaster is on. Dean Lowry might be another one of those cap casualties that you see before midnight if they can't restructure him. So yeah, I think a Dalvin Tomlin would be phenomenal, especially in Joe Barry's new system that he's going to be employing. I don't know how similar it's going to be to Mike Pettine's. If he brings that Tampa 2, it depends on what he's really wanting to do and how creative he's wanting to get. I think for Joe Barry, I think this is going to be the most talented defense that he's seen.
By far.
So,
yeah.
Adding a Dalvin Tomlin would get him the depth that he needs. Another potential move that you could see on offense would be adding a guy like Delaney Walker out of Tennessee, a guy that's worked with Matt LaFleur in the past, when Matt LaFleur was in Tennessee as their one of their offensive coordinators. So, you probably won't see a Will Fuller type move, but you could see a Delaney Walker type move. You could see potentially James White as the replacement. I know there's a lot of speech right now saying he's got ties to Tampa Bay, but if they don't come to an agreement with him, James White would be a phenomenal replacement for Aaron Jones.
Absolutely.
Especially if
Mhm.
he's not going to be the main back in Green Bay, if you're going to have AJ Dillon or Jamal Williams taking the majority of your carries, James White would fit in very well in this system. So those are the kind of moves I would expect to see over the next week. I don't think you'll see a splash. The only other name I could really think of is Troy Hill at cornerback from Los Angeles, the guy that was opposite Jalen Ramsey. But
yeah,
go ahead.
I know there's just a bump off of what you were going off of with the cornerbacks with the Troy Hill, the last comment. There's a lot of older, hitting that 30, 31 year range of cornerbacks that have been released. You look at Jason Verrett, Malcolm Butler. I know people think that Patrick Peterson's probably past what he used to be, obviously, but
I would take him in a heartbeat just for
so would I. And then obviously Jason Verrett covers that cornerback and that return ability. So you can kind of knock out two birds with one stone, I guess. The only thing I see with Will Fuller is that they were, and according to multiple reports, extremely aggressive at the trade deadline. It went to apparently, and I'm paraphrasing here, I just read an article about it a couple of weeks ago, to the last minute with the compensation in regards to Will Fuller. So the only thing I can see is that because of the interest at the trade deadline last year would be why I think Will Fuller would make sense. Obviously, he makes sense for multiple reasons. Matt LaFleur coached him at Notre Dame. He has that deep threat ability, outside of other side of Devontae Adams. Another name that I kind of really like, obviously this is all dependent on Aaron Jones and what he does, and Chris Carson out of Seattle.
Carson, great call. Great call.
Chris Carson out of Seattle. He kind of has that. He doesn't have that as much dynamic ability as Aaron Jones, but you pair up, that trio. And I think with the LaFleur system, the Shanahan system, that 3-back system, they love it. So there's going to be a third back in here somewhere, whether it's Dylan Williams and somebody else or Dylan Jones and somebody else. So Jones or Williams, it's going to be one of them. I think one of them comes back no matter what. But yeah, I think another name that I was floating around, kind of just skimming through, Shelby Harris, defensive tackle out of, I believe he played in Denver last. He's another kind of big body run stuffer. Somebody's got to get paired up with Kenny Clark. I mean, he's got to have somebody else in there. I mean, he's doing everything on his own pretty much. No disrespect to.
Well, you want to keep the mileage off of him too. You don't.
Well, yeah.
You don't want him wearing out by week 12 because he's getting 80% of the defensive snaps. So
right.
Depth at the interior defensive line position is key in this.
Yeah. I agree. And I know that the draft is kind of limited. I know I got one name and we'll get to that later on. Mm-hmm. So as far as the interior defensive line, there's not a whole lot of draft prospects out there. I'm not the draft expert. I'm just going off what I do my research on. But so I think that at the very least, as far as free agency goes, as far as making these additions, that they're going to have to target, whether it's a mid-level or a lower level defensive tackle, for sure. And then there's a lot of free agent wide receivers too. I mean, I like Kenny Galladay and I like Curtis Samuel, but I don't know if I don't know what the market's going to look like. Cause I've read reports where the cap is going to jump back up over 200 next year. So are a lot of these guys going to take 1-year deals, or are they going to be looking at getting completely paid out? It's a weird year. Obviously everything's weird. So the league year is going to be extremely different. You're going to probably see a lot of 1-year deals in my opinion.
If these guys were smart, they would take the 1-year prove it deals, like a Galladay might take like a 1-year, $10 million deal, 1-year, $9 million deal, and then go out and ball out, have a 1,300 yard, 95 catch season. And then he's getting paid in 2022.
Right. When the cap is
one last move. And a lot of people roasted me on Twitter about this move, and I don't know why, but even with the return of Devin Funchess, this is just still something that I would love to see. I would love to see Randall Cobb come back.
Oh, absolutely.
His relationship with Aaron Rodgers it's only paralleled by Devontae Adams. I mean, that chemistry that Rodgers and Cobb had with each other. Cobb's improvisational skills at the second level, when the pocket breaks down, when the pass protection breaks down, and Rodgers has to roll out and take off running. I think Cobb was the best weapon that Rodgers had throughout his entire career in being like, okay, I need this dude to go here. And Cobb is there. Cobb is taking that pass and going another 15, 20 yards. So I would love to see Randall Cobb back in a Packers uniform, whether that might be for, $1 million, couple $1 million, who knows?
Bears fans love Randall Cobb. Just ask him.
If Juan is watching, Randall Cobb, got you a Bears Randall Cobb jersey coming. So we're about quarter till the top of the hour. We're going to move on to a mock draft. We're just going to give, what we would like to see for perhaps the first 2 or 3 rounds in a mock. Brandon, I'll let you go first with what you got going to Green Bay in the first round.
Well, I've literally, show you my notes. I have my first pick scribbled out probably 10 times because I'm I see great minds think alike. I'm having such a hard time with this. Now I have it finally down to my guy who I've kind of fallen in love with. And I think you did too. And we'll go back and forth on that. I was in love with Travis Etienne out of Clemson as the running back. Again, it's going to depend on how free agency unfolds and kind of stuff, who they add on later on down in the offseason. But a guy that I just I watched his pro day right down the street from here. I'm going with cornerback Greg Newsome out of Northwestern.
You fell in love with him the exact same time I did. I actually know that video you watched. Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a 4.31 speed. All right. That's what he ran at his pro day. 6'1". Yep. I mean, Kevin Kane 6'3". I don't care. I'll give up 2 inches out of Kevin Kane. Get out of Kevin Kane. He's, his ball skills are remarkable. He's extremely competitive. And I mean, he presses coverage. I mean, that's what he did at Northwestern. And I mean, Pat Fitzgerald is no slouch. I mean, that's a tough program. That's a tough program.
Yes.
You earn what you get there. Yeah. I mean, you're fighting for, it's people will be like, the Big Ten, cornerbacks, receivers, running backs. The Big Ten's more of the pro style offenses and defenses that you see at the next level. So I think the big thing for me too is I was watching some tape on him. I forgot who tweeted it out. I can't give you credit. I apologize. His tackling ability is remarkable. I mean, he's not afraid to get down and get dirty. And, watching Kevin Keen every Sunday try to arm tackle his way down the field. I mean, it's just, jumping 10 seconds before the ball's even to the receiver in the end zone. I mean, that's my pick. I went back and forth with probably 3 or 4 guys. But I kind of fell in love with him on his pro day. I like the length. I like the speed. Yep. And I like that he can tackle. I mean, I know it sounds stupid when you're talking about NFL professional football players tackling, but as pathetic as it is, sometimes that's something that, needs to be addressed. So I'm going with Greg Newsome, cornerback out of Northwestern.
And that was also my pick as well. Cornerback Greg Newsome. I believe you tagged me in that video.
I did. Yeah.
And that's when I was like, immediately I crossed out. I had, I can't even remember who I had. I believe I had the tackle out of Michigan.
Okay.
Yeah, as my pick, but I was like, no, we're going Greg Newsome. One statistic that I'd like to point out about Greg Newsome is he allowed a quarterback rating of 31.7, which was the best quarterback rating out of any defender out of all 5 power conferences in the draft this year. So the best quarterback rating allowed out of any defender in the Power 5 conference. And you touched on his 4.31 speed, which means you add the 4.31 speed to his ability to press cover. He's covering anybody in the NFL from the line of scrimmage all the way downfield.
And guess what? You can't throw another receiver on the other side.
No.
Newsflash, you have another all pro over there. So
that's the kind of intangible that can make a cornerback all pro material, is when you have the ability to jam somebody, you have the ability to punch somebody in the mouth at the line of scrimmage. But if they just so happen to slip by you, I'm sorry, I'm right behind you because I'm running a 4.340.
Yeah.
So that these intangibles are the ones that I just were. His press coverage ability, his field awareness, his open field tackling. He could play with the guys right now. He could be a day one starter for Green Bay right now, and he could hit and run with the best wide receivers in the NFL right now. So I think if you were to pair him on the other side of the field from Jair Alexander, you might be talking about the potential, and I wouldn't say day one, but the potential to have the best cornerback duo in the league.
I would say the best secondary.
Yeah. Yeah,
Not even. I mean, Adrian Amos is is the number one rated safety according to PFF.
And Darnell Savage is starting to make his way up there too.
Absolutely, that's a great point. Yep, absolutely.
Greg Newsome has the ability. I'm not going to say he's a certified all-pro guy right now, but he has the ability and the talent to be an all-pro cornerback the same way Jair Alexander was when he was drafted. So that is without a doubt my number one pick for the Packers in the first round. Let's hear your second round pick.
So that was another one. I know I went over it with the first round and a couple scribbles. I had a couple in this one as well. I fell in love with just a caveat. I am not a Northwestern fan, nor do I owe anybody any money at Northwestern. I was torn between two guys, both Big Ten schools. I know I'm biased, but that's okay. Rashawn Slater. He's a tackle, guard, and center. He played at Northwestern last year. So I was torn with, yeah, kind of like a Elton Jenkins. Yep. So I at first I had him because I was like, oh man, that's exactly what we need. I mean, we shuffle guys along, with injuries. I mean, for God's sakes, Elton Jenkins played every position last year. But I'm going with need here. I don't know if this is what they will do. Again, it depends on free agency. But I was watching the tape on defensive tackle Davion Nixon out of Iowa. 6'3", 305 pounds. He's extremely quick off the snap. He's extremely tough. I know that's like everybody can say that about every player, but he's a run stuffer and he clogs up guys at the line of scrimmage. And in order to have a successful 3-4 defense, which is what Joe Barry is going to imply or keep with, you got to have those linebackers being able to play in space, and they cannot be getting to the next level. Offensive linemen on the team cannot be getting to that second level and getting to those linebackers. And that's where a lot of that problems on defense, in my opinion, comes from, is that these linebackers aren't able to make plays because you got Kenny Clark. If Kenny Clark's not in the game, well, then you don't have pretty much anybody out there because nobody is getting the production that Kenny Clark is. Yep. This guy, I think, could. I don't know if he lasts to the late second round. Obviously the Packers are picking, late rounds again. So in my opinion, I think he's a prospect who's also developing a lot of pass rushing skills. I broke a little bit of his film down with the all 22 out of Iowa, and they use him for multiple. He's played interior and he's played out exterior defensive end. So he's a guy who's versatile. Who can stuff the run, who can grab an extra block off the line and free up Sedarius or Preston and then your middle linebackers, whoever that may be, come August. So that's kind of my second round pick. Kind of went back and forth between the two. I think they go into the trenches at least with one of these first three picks. I hope at least. I'm a trenches guy. I think I told you that. So that's my thoughts on Davion Nixon. I think that's who I want in the second round.
I have a surprise pick.
Jordan Love was enough.
No. See, I'm also not one to draft like best available. I would prefer they draft for need.
Yes.
I'm not the biggest fan of drafting. Let's say offensive tackle is your biggest need, but there is a linebacker that fell to you, and he's 20 positions ranked higher than any of the tackles. Well, that's fine. If you don't need a linebacker, go with your tackle.
Right.
Go with the position in need. So this may not necessarily be one of those picks. This is a pick that I've watched this kid play. Only because of who his older brother is. And I'm going with Amon-Ra St. Brown out of USC.
Okay. I like that.
Equanimeous' little brother. He's not as big and does not have the top end speed that Equanimeous had. I believe Amon-Ra is 6'1". I believe he's about 208, 210 pounds. But he's a gadget guy. He's a guy that you could use out of the slot. He's a guy you could use like in a motion or a jet sweep. He's a weapon. He's kind of like a Randall Cobb style player. He's somebody you could plug into special teams if you absolutely needed him to.
Okay.
And I believe a true slot receiver is what Green Bay's offense is missing. If you can really try and point something out that offense is missing, they don't really have that true slot style wide receiver like Green Bay did a couple years ago with Randall Cobb. I thought for a couple years there, Randall Cobb was one of the more effective slot receivers in the game. Especially when he was paired up with Jordy Nelson, when they both had that season. I believe it was like 1,200 yards and they both had double-digit touchdowns. So Amon-Ra could really bolster that offense by giving them that short field crossing pattern style wide receiver, some guy that you could dump the ball off, 6-7 yards downfield if your deep option isn't open, somebody that you can get running in motion behind in the backfield. And that was one thing that Green Bay really missed in that NFC Championship game. They really had a stagnant offense. It kind of seemed like Tampa matched up perfectly with what Green Bay had to offer offensively. And there was nothing that they could do to counteract that. I mean, you really did not see a whole lot of motion in the backfield. You did not really see a whole lot of plays that were called to design guys open in areas that you could attack the Tampa's weaknesses. So maybe a guy like a St. Brown out of USC might help them get that weapon, that midfield level weapon that you need. I really don't want to see Davante Adams catching a whole lot of passes, 3-4 yards down from the line of scrimmage, going right into a linebacker. That just kind of makes me cringe every time I see it.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on that. I like that pick. I have him written down as one of my watches, kind of guys to kind of look at as far as receiver. I would imagine within the first 3 rounds, I hope that they go interior. Trenches, interior lineman, or running or receiver. I think they absolutely have to. I think that the lack of attention they gave to it last year at times. Now I know they had the number 1 offense. I know Rodgers was the MVP. That was because of Rodgers. I mean,
a little bit of it was because of LaFleur. I believe.
I agree. I agree.
A lot more in LaFleur's system than he ever would have in McCarthy's system. So.
Yeah, no, right. I think that's something. Whether again, it's all going to depend on what they do in free agency. But I think I do like that pick. I actually had him written down as well as a sleeper in my second round.
Yep.
I think it kind of depends too on where they're going to pick, because I have a gut feeling that they're going to be making some more trades, like they did last year. I think instead of last year trading up, a couple spots. I mean, we'll see. I mean, my
biggest gut feeling is they trade out of the first round entirely. I don't think they end up seeing a guy that they feel is an absolute need there and at the end of the first round. And they trade out and maybe get a couple picks in the beginning or the middle of the second round. I just hope that they don't end up passing on somebody like a TJ Watt type talent like they did a couple years ago when they traded out of the first round.
For Kevin King.
Yeah, for Kevin King.
I know. That still gets brought up by Packers fans, and rightfully so. It drives me nuts as well. I hate doing that though. We all can sit here and be the Monday morning. I mean, we get it. Yeah, there's but unless you win the Super Bowl, every team in the NFL can make that argument. I mean, you can make it. I mean, for not to knock on them, they get picked on enough, but 90 miles south in Chicago. I mean, look what they did in the 2017 draft, and they're the same fan base that goes after us about drafting Jordan Love, and so I get it. Hindsight should never.
Shots, Brandon.
I'm going at it. We're ready. I'm ready to fight. Juan, I'm coming for you. I know you're paying attention. But I love Bears fans. They make me laugh. Better than Vikings fans. I said the same thing to Juan when on my interview. I just got to take a couple of shots here and there. We'll get it out of the way. They'll come after me later. But I actually popped on a Bears podcast last week and was going back and forth with a couple of them. Nice. But I think they're going to have to address. Obviously, at some point, we got to address the needs. The needs are receiver. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, outside of Davante, unless you get. I mean, I think MVS is going to have a good year. I think you could argue he was the best player in that NFC Championship game on our team.
He's had the same style of progression throughout the first 3 years of his career that Davante Adams has.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I mean, there was people calling for him.
Second year, because he came in and took over for Jarrett Boykin.
Remember
Jarrett Boykin, the fumble guy in the 2013 season against the Bears. So I saw his progression when Davante Adams took over for Boykin. I was like, holy crap, this guy's going to be phenomenal. And that was the same thing that MVS did when he came in his rookie year. He really showed off the final 7-8 games or so. And I'm like, wow, this kid's got potential. Same thing. Second year, you're like, get rid of this guy right now. Get him off the team immediately. So I think they're going to have that same style of progression for sure. But adding do you have a wide receiver as your third round addition, or what do you have?
You're right, man. You're really good. You read my mind. I do. And I have a guy who, again, I fell in love with recently. He's cool. Go for it.
North Carolina.
Nope. I'm going. He's out of Ole Miss. 5'9", 184 pounds. Not very big. Kind of has like a DJ Moore, Debo Samuel type body. Elijah Moore, receiver out of Ole Miss, ran a 4.40. Extremely fast. And he's perfect for the slot, obviously with the 5'9" speed or the 5'9" height and the speed. So I went with Elijah Moore. And then a lot of chatter about him fitting into LaFleur's system. They say he, out of all the receivers in the draft, he's the one that slides right in there. He kind of gives you that, San Francisco's Debo Samuel. I know Matt LaFleur in the Shanahan system gets compared all the time. So he kind of fits what I think they need. I think they need that speed in the slot because you know what you're getting out of Devontae. Nobody in the league can cover him. I don't care who you are. Nobody can cover him. He shut everybody up. Including Jalen Ramsey. So nobody can cover him. You know what you're getting out of Devontae. But when you're the Packers offense and you're scheming up for whoever you're going against that week, all they're doing is shifting that coverage to Devontae. You got to have somebody in that lineup, whether it's in that slot or out of the backfield, that can take the top off the defense. And I think he fits that mold. I mean, big program, a lot of speed, extremely shifty, and he fits the system that LaFleur runs, I think, to a T. I think it's perfect.
And offensive weapons out of the SEC have been very successful in NFL over the past, I'd say, 7 to 8 years. So that's definitely not a bad pick at all. The other pick I had that was similar to both Amon-Ra and the gentleman you just said was Chontarius Tutu Atwell out of Louisville.
Yep. I'm seeing him too. He
was kind of like an honorable mention there in the second or third round. But my third round pick is Josh Myers, center out of.
Okay.
I believe that is a guy with the pieces that the Packers already have on the offensive line with your Elgin Jenkins, your David Bakhtiari. I believe that Josh Myers is a guy that could come in, start at center day one. Now, he's not going to immediately replace Corey Linsley as an all-pro center, but he is 6'5", 312 pounds. He's got phenomenal strength. His ability to take on both defensive lineman, your nose tackle, your interior rusher, and linebackers at the second level is quite good. He's not the most athletic blocker, but I believe, athleticism at the second level is something that could be attained. Once you're working out at the next level, at the NFL level, you can see guys not necessarily become more athletic, but become smarter, and they can mold their game to kind of crutch themselves where they lack athletically. An interior offensive lineman like that doesn't necessarily need to be running 75 yards downfield.
No,
David Bakhtiari is. But he's got a very good balance between both his pass blocking abilities and his run blocking abilities. He's a Power 5 offensive lineman, Big Ten offensive lineman. So Ohio State, Michigan, and Wisconsin are really O-lineman factories, I guess you will, out of the Big Ten. So I do like him. If we cannot keep Corey Linsley, I do like Josh Myers to come in and replace him as a potential day one starter and a guy that I believe that could be very effective in keeping Aaron Rodgers on his feet in the backfield.
And how cool would it be to replace Corey Linsley's position with the same guy not from the same guy, but from the same school? How interesting would that be?
I'm almost positive the gentleman before Corey Linsley was Ohio State too, wasn't he? What the hell was his name?
You're thinking, well, there was a couple. I mean, you remember the Jeff Saturday days.
Well, there was Jeff Saturday, but there was another gentleman. I can't remember.
I know who you're referring to, and I'm drawn. Didn't they go down to Tampa the following year?
I believe so.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but Ohio State seems to pump out pretty good offensive linemen. So I think
Big Ten,
Josh Myers could come in and be a day one starter, be a guy that could be effective. And obviously, you got the greatest hands in the league under your butt. So he's got all the wisdom that he would need in order to be an effective center. And
you're talking about an elite offensive line to begin. Yes. I mean, it's not like he's coming in and he's the focal point of the offensive line and they're building around that draft pick. You're coming in with a Hall of Famer to the left, possibly two of them to your left with Elgin Jenkins. I'm getting way too far ahead of myself with Elgin Jenkins, but
he's starting his career off as he's on pace. But that's exactly why I had Josh Myers there in the third round, because he's not going to need to be that guy that needs to be all pro day one.
Right.
Like a Joe Thomas needed to come in Cleveland and he needed to be all pro day one. That's not what they're going to expect out of a Josh Myers. He's going to have that all pro crew to fall back on, give him those pointers, be like, all right, this is what I saw. You need to do this, this, and this. And I think that takes the pressure off of a guy that's going to be a day one starter as a rookie, especially when you have Aaron Rodgers under center.
Mhm.
If you have something to alleviate that pressure, something to, coach you through what you're doing, it can really help. And I really do see in a guy like Josh Myers being a day one starter and being effective for this offense. We are just past the top of the 2:00 hour. Don't forget, guys, it was daylight savings time last night. I woke up at like 8:45. I had no idea what day it even was. So
Yeah, that was about what time I woke up too, with my son in my face. So it's a great way to wake up.
Don't forget, we are powered by our friends over at Manscaped and at DraftKings. Don't forget, at Manscaped this tournament season, take care of your hair and holes with the best tools for the job. We're talking about our sponsors, Manscaped, the global leaders in male grooming from head to toe. When the clock winds down in March, be clutch and avoid the upset with the Manscaped Performance Package to keep all of your hairs and holes trimmed. Start taking care of your man parts today with 20% off and free shipping by going to manscaped.com and using Brawl for our exclusive offer. Check that out again. That is manscaped.com with that Brawl code. Now, moving on to the final segment. It's going to be all fun and games this offseason, talking about all the moves that they could potentially make or will make, and, bringing in this guy, keeping that guy, drafting this guy, preseason, all of that. But it's really going to be, gritting your teeth, clenching your fists when the season starts, because the Packers have one of the hardest schedules I have seen in probably close to a decade.
It's not even fun.
I
terrible.
cannot remember the last time they had this big of a gauntlet of a schedule. I mean, you're talking about, so not including your Vikings, Lions, and Bears, which they play both on the road and at home, of course, but you're talking a home schedule of Cleveland, Los Angeles Rams, Pittsburgh Steelers, Seattle Seahawks, and the Washington football team. It's been 20 years since they've had a home schedule that tough.
Yeah, I think that's when we first had our meeting. That was one of the first things I said to you. I said, I think it came out in like December, late December, and the Packers were making that run into the playoffs. And I said, I never like to look ahead of it because you're so focused on what's going on in the current year. And I took a peek at it, and I put my phone right back down, and I said to myself, if we don't win the Super Bowl this year, which obviously we didn't, next year is going to be extremely challenging. I mean, extremely challenging, especially if these teams play to the capabilities of which they played this year, or maybe even improve. And then you're talking about, I know my Bears fans are giddy because if you add Russell Wilson to the Bears, which there's a lot of smoke out there.
Yeah.
I mean, now you're right. Now your schedule gets even much more harder because now you're talking about seeing Russell Wilson twice a year.
Yep.
It's extremely difficult. And then you're talking about going away for whatever reason. This Packers team cannot win on the West Coast. I don't understand why. I don't get it. You got 2 games out there, San Francisco and Arizona. So it's going to be hard. And I think once the actual schedule gets released, which I believe is usually in May, it's
usually right around the draft time. After the draft, they have
an
hour-long special on ESPN for some odd reason. They
make
a special out of anything with the NFL now.
It's like breaking news. I'm like, we already know kind of what's going on. And then we got the 17th game possibly, which they're pinning up with. It's going to be the division, they'll line up with where you placed in the division the year prior. So there's already some chatter with the Packers playing.
I heard that there were talks about the Packers would play the Bucks in that.
Game. I've heard the Bucks or Kansas City.
Yeah, Kansas City too. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard those 2 teams specifically. So I guess we'll see. I do like the 17th game added. There's nothing. I mean, NFL's king. There's nothing better than.
I love football too, but I'm a purist. I don't want to see the 17th game because I want to keep our guys as healthy as possible going into the playoffs. Especially if you don't get a first round bye, which I do not believe this Packers team is going to get. I first want to break down the home schedule because I'm not nearly as afraid about the road schedule as I am about the home schedule.
I agree with that.
See, it's all going to depend on the Seahawks. The Seahawks don't necessarily frighten me yet. Aaron Rodgers owns Seattle at home. Russell Wilson has never won a game at Lambeau. I believe he's 0-5 now in Lambeau Field. So
knock on wood.
Even if they keep Russell Wilson, that game doesn't necessarily fear me. And then if they lose Russell Wilson, obviously that game is probably, I would say Packers are 7-point favorites in that game. The one game on this home schedule that terrifies me is Washington. And it's because of that defensive line.
Interesting. Okay.
That was actually the one team that I did not want to play in the playoffs was Washington. You saw what they did to Tampa Bay with a backup quarterback.
Oh yeah, they ran all.
They had Tom Brady on the run, and that was a very close game up until about the beginning of the fourth quarter. That was a game that could have gone either way. For the first 3 quarters of that game, and I was very glad we did not have to play Washington because that pass rush was terrifying. Another game that it has the potential to be a great matchup. It has the potential to be somewhat of an overpowering matchup. Is that Rams opponent with Matt Stafford now at quarterback? It's no longer Jared Goff. It's Matt Stafford.
That's a way different
Stafford
team now.
Obviously knows how to play in Lambeau. He knows his opponent in the Green Bay Packers. They're still going to have a phenomenal defense. You're going to see 100% Aaron Donald. You're not going to see an injured Aaron Donald. They're still going to have that secondary intact with Jalen Ramsey and the rest of those guys. So those are 2 potential losses right there. I mean, you're staring down the barrel of a potential 5-3 record at home this year, which means you have to win a minimum of 5 games on the road in order to be in the contention for not only division title, but a playoff berth. So I'm looking at this road schedule. I see AZ, which, with how well Kyler Murray has been playing in the acquisition of JJ Watt, that's no longer a gimme with how bad AZ has been in the past. This Niners team, even without, a quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo or what have you, what they do going forward the next couple of weeks, their defense fully healthy is not something to shake a stick at either. And then you have the Ravens who have Lamar Jackson. And I historically speaking, I know teams are different now than they were in the past, but historically speaking, the Packers have always struggled with mobile quarterbacks like that.
Yep, absolutely.
So go ahead.
I like that we're finishing, the last topic is being the schedule, because every move that we just talked about, whether free agency, cap restructure, drafts, is going to play into the schedule because, like you said, you lose Corey Linsley, you're playing Aaron Donald.
Yep.
You lose Corey Linsley, you're playing Akeem Hicks twice a year. I mean, he's going to be healthy again this year.
You're playing that Washington football team pass rush.
Right.
So
right.
It's there is a ceiling for Green Bay to still go 13-3. That is the absolute maximum of a ceiling I see in the schedule is a 13-3 finish for the Packers. I see them maybe, their ceiling would be 7-1 at home and 6-2 on the road. But you're staring down the barrel of more likely an 11-5 season, which isn't a bad season by any means. But I do see a Ravens loss on the road. I see a Niners loss on the road.
That team's always they're going to get better this year. They're going to be way better this year.
And you got to factor in the fact that they're not going to continue on the trend of being, 11-1 against the division over the past 2 years. They may drop a game in Minnesota or in Chicago. And they may potentially drop one of those division games at home too. I mean, it's a coin flip with the top 3 teams in the NFC North. It's kind of like that Michigan, Ohio State, or your Bama, Auburn. Sometimes you throw the records out and it's just a fist fight.
Right. I completely agree with that.
So
the Saints will be interesting too. Sorry to cut you off. We're at the Saints, which is obviously a heart. We won there last year.
Yeah.
But it's going to be curious to see what they do as far as they're in cap prison. Like they're not doing
cap purgatory.
Yeah. So I don't know what that team's going to look like, but it's always, again, going down to the Superdome is always a challenging environment, especially let's all put our hands together and hope that there's fans through the course of the year this year, not, random cities. So, going down to the Superdome was going to be an interesting, aspect and who they play at quarterback. And if they really think that they have the answer down there, then, obviously Drew Brees is out the door.
That's not obvious yet.
It's not, but
obvious. There is some stirrings, some rumblings about him and potentially returning. He's honestly, at this point, he's a modern day Brett Favre.
Yeah. Well, I think we're giving him a little bit too much credit. I go back and forth with Drew Brees because I do not think he's as great as he gets lauded for.
No, I'm talking about with his retirement shenanigans. He
He had that video
there was a video captured of him when he got beat by Tampa Bay and Tom Brady, where Tom Brady throws a touchdown pass to his son, and it's like, oh, that's so touching, and his final goodbye, and it was on every news media outlet from here to Cancun, Mexico, and then all of a sudden he posts that workout video. It's like, dude, are you retiring or like?
And didn't somebody just say something about it? They did something with his contract too. I'd be lying to you. I mean, I could try to see if I can find it, but I feel like they did something with Drew Brees' contract like recently, like within the last like week or so, which kind of
last I knew, grammar stuff. Last I knew, he had not officially filed his retirement paperwork yet.
Correct. And he has that NBC deal that's pending.
Oh yeah, but I mean we've seen quite a few of the guys have deals that were pending, and also they come up. Jay Cutler did that when he went to Miami.
Right. Yeah, it's going back to the schedule. The Saints will be interesting to get into. The Bengals, I mean, they're not going to be a pushover. Joe Burrow is going to be healthy, and they're going to, they have plenty of cap space.
And they will obviously be adding pieces around them to make them better. So that's definitely not a give me game either. You're 100% right on that. Yeah,
and we'll get into it. Like we said in May when the actual schedule gets released, I'm always curious to see where these teams fall at the time of year. Obviously at Arizona, you're not going to come to Lambeau, so that kind of takes it out of the picture. But if the Rams come to Lambeau and it's December, I don't care what anybody says. The cold weather affects you if you're not from.
Oh, it does. It does. And you saw that in the divisional round.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw injuries or not, there were guys that were rusty in that game. So
right. So I mean, and kind of with Aaron Donald. Yeah, he was injured. Had he been playing in Tampa Bay, Florida, he probably would have been okay. But when it's 16 degrees outside and you're getting punched in your ribs, it's a different kind of game.
Yeah. No.
So
change of climate definitely takes an impact on anybody. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting though. That's for sure.
I would like to say, realistically speaking, as of right now, and this all depends on what kind of moves they make going forward with the draft and both with free agency. Realistically speaking, I'm going to give the Packers an 11-5 win-loss total for next year. I see them winning six games at home, 5 games on the road. I think they're going to have a very balanced team. So I don't think they'll struggle any more on the road than they will at home. But I think 11-5 is a pretty solid prediction for them. What do you got?
I think that's pretty solid. I'm leaning more towards 10-6. I think that their offense takes a step back, maybe not huge, too big. I guess it always depends on free agency, but I kind of see 10-6. I don't think the Steelers are going to be what they were. Obviously Ben's on limping on at every game. So I think that's, they got a couple gimmies in here, not many. So I'm going to go with 10-6. I know that's like the safe bet, prediction. And I think we'll kind of redo it again when we see the actual physical schedule with the dates. But I think looking at the two, the way ahead, I think 10-6 is probably, which I think is going to be enough unless Russell Wilson gets to Chicago. I think that's probably going to be enough to win your division. I do not like the new playoff layout. I do not. I like that. To me, I don't like it. You can go 13-3 and lose in the wild card. And I mean, it seems kind of people will, teams, people will tell you and fans, well, if you were that, if you were 13-3 and you were good, you shouldn't lose in the wild card. Well, it's hard. Saturday. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter what records go out the window in every game. I don't care, especially divisional games. You're playing a divisional opponent in the playoff. So yeah, I think 10-6 probably gives you enough as of right now to win the division. But I guess we'll see what happens with the free agency and the draft, and all this is a constant change, as is the NFL in its entirety. So, and again, we'll see what the 17th game is like too. I guess
that's true.
We're not counting that. So I guess we'll kind of, as of what the information we have now, I'll go with 10-6.
Yep. That's a fair assessment. I'm not going to disagree with that at all. It is 1:15 the hour, and we are going to wrap up the podcast portion of the show. Don't forget, guys, we are powered by our friends over at DraftKings and at Manscaped. It's March. College basketball is heating up thanks to our partnership with DraftKings. Now you can take your best shot at who will be in the tournament before the field is set for your share of $100,000. Create or access your DraftKings account and enter the contest for your shot at $100,000 in cash prizes. We are going to wrap up the podcast portion of the show. Don't forget, I am Ryno. You can find me on Twitter at Sports Talk Ryno. Mr. Brandon, you can find him on Twitter at Wisco_Brandon. And of course, the podcast, you can find that at Packers Brawl. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on Facebook, and of course a like over at YouTube as well. So we're gonna stay live on Facebook for just a couple more minutes to give you guys a little bit more information, but this will conclude the podcast version of the show. Thanks guys for listening.